Welcome to Design to Thrive with Dr. Brooke. I'm your host, Dr. Brooke Silverhorn. In this podcast, we share wisdom for women and legacy for daughters through conversations around health and life, family and faith, through a lens of nervous system healing, embodied living, and God-designed rhythms. In today's episode, we are going to continue the conversation around lessons that I learned during my healing journey after a thyroid cancer diagnosis. Just a side note, I didn't mention this in the previous video, but I wanted to let you know that I actually share many of these lessons in a book that I co-authored called The Way to Wholeness: Stories of Physical, Mental, and Emotional Healing. What I want to do in these podcasts, what I want to do in this podcast series is expand upon these lessons and go a little deeper, sharing with you some of the thoughts that I didn't end up putting into the book. There were 3 lessons that really struck me in the very beginning of my healing journey. First lesson I want to share with you, I actually initially learned through a business lens from a past mentor. And there is one right way to do there is no one right way to do things, but there is a right way for you. So how I was able to apply this to my healing journey and my own personal life is that when I was first diagnosed, I sought out guidance from a friend, Dr. Marcia Schaefer, who I talked about in the first video, and just asked her, if you had to do it all over again, would you do the same thing? And there were a couple things that she said she wished she had done differently. And so I took note of that. And then as I progressed through the first few months, there were some things that I realized were not working specifically for me. So I made adjustments. I tweaked what I was doing instead of sticking firmly to a vegan program. I started adding some animal protein back in, and 12 years later, I focus actually more on animal protein than I do on fruits and vegetables and things like that, because that is what my body does better with. And I think that's an important thing to note, is that what works for one individual doesn't necessarily always work for everybody. There is a podcaster and a name that I followed uh, in that early season of healing. His name is Chris Work, and he has a website and podcast called Chris Beat Cancer. His own healing journey is quite amazing. He was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, I believe at the age of 26 or 27. If you're interested in the rest of his healing journey, obviously go to his website. But one of the things that was really cool in the beginning was he interviewed so many different people who had healed naturally from cancer. And the thing that struck me the most was that there was not one way of doing things. There were individuals who did a ketogenic type diet. There were individuals who did a fruitarian diet and they only ate fruit. There were individuals who had parts and pieces of a similar journey, but there was uniqueness across the board. So that was one thing that I think is really important for you to take away, is that if you are in any sort of season of healing in your life, that what works for your best friend or what works for a practitioner that you follow or some influencer on Instagram, that what works for them may not be the best path for you. And secondarily to this, it kind of goes along with this line of thinking, is that not everyone is going to agree with the choices that you make. And that is not an indictment of you and your decision, because you are doing the best that you can with the information that you have in the worldview that you hold. And sometimes people don't hold the same worldview as you. So the year that I was diagnosed, it was April of 2014. So I had started this healing journey. And in the very beginning, when I was talking about doing Gerson therapy, which is the primary modality that I used, it was a lot of juicing, it was liver detox, supplementation. And in the beginning, my family, my parents, my in-laws, my grandma, my grandparents, they were afraid that I was making a bad decision, for lack of a better way of putting it. But it was unfamiliar. The same thing happened when I made the decision to have a home birth for my second daughter. I had actually wanted a home birth with my first daughter, but I was outvoted between my parents and my husband. And at the end of the day, with my oldest daughter, Harley's birth, she was 5 weeks premature. There was a reason why her birth ended up in a hospital. And I am grateful for that, even though I wanted to have a home birth. But when I told my husband um, that I wanted to do a home birth for our daughter, Ashlyn, side note, two separate relationships. So my older daughter, Harley, has her dad, Tony, lives in Minneapolis. We divorced, and we'll probably do a podcast about that. Definitely will. But so my current husband, Jason, he basically said, okay, if that's what you want to do, I support that. But it was my parents, it was my grandparents, it was aunts and uncles and people who are kind of like partially removed from my life, and definitely not in my life in a way where they have any bearing on the decisions that I make. So when I made the decision to not have the traditional medical treatment for thyroid cancer, there was a little bit of pushback because it was unfamiliar. And I think because people have been trained in a way to not have confidence in their bodies, to believe that their bodies are broken, that they are not designed to thrive, that they are not designed to heal. And so when someone steps outside of that traditional lens, it's scary. So fast forward, I'm diagnosed in April. In August of that same year, my high school graduating class had our 15-year reunion, and I graduated with 45 people. And somehow only 15 showed up. And there were people who actually live in my hometown who didn't show up. So that's pretty sad. But anyway, I wanted to go. I wanted to be around people and in a way kind of like celebrate life because of this diagnosis that I was given. I don't like using that terminology, but anyway, that's the best way to say it when I got that diagnosis. So I'm there, I'm with these classmates, and one of them is in the medical arena. And so I don't know, I never hid what I was doing from people. I didn't blast it across um, the internet or anything, but I just thought, here's a person who might be interested in this alternative thing that I'm doing. And I was wrong. So I start sharing with her how I was doing a lot of juicing and that I was drinking 10 to 13 cups of fresh vegetable and fruit juice every day. And how it's so cool that, the enzymes in this juice are what actually like go and essentially attack the cancer, and that you need to detoxify the liver because your body is releasing all of these toxins, and liver detoxification support basically speeds up that process so the liver doesn't get bogged down. And in Gerson therapy, that liver detoxification process is through coffee enemas, and you do 3 or 4 coffee enemas per day. It's a lot. So I started telling her this, and I quote, and she said, I quote, "Ew." And so for me, it kind of reined me in a little bit. And I realized that my journey is not for everyone. It takes the right individual to say, no, I'm okay with keeping my whole thyroid, even though there is a part of it that is rogue, so to speak. It takes a certain kind of individual to say, I am not going to, use radioactive iodine to kill my entire thyroid, because I believe that God gave me this organ and that I want to keep as much of it as I can so that my body functions the way that God designed it to. So I'm going to do things to help my body's immune system to start working better and to help my body heal from the inside out. And not everyone can do that. So that was the first lesson, is that, first of all, there is no one right way to do things. So healing can look different for every individual. And then part of that is also that you're not going to please everyone. The path that you take may be offensive to others. It may seem counterintuitive to them. I even have that in my chiropractic practice. The technique that I use sometimes seems counterintuitive because it is so incredibly gentle, and we are working with the body, with the nervous system and its ability to self-heal and self-correct. So there are times where I will make a super gentle adjustment, and the next day someone will come back and say, you barely touched me, and yet I was sore because of all the shifts that are happening in my body. The second lesson that I want to share stems around self-care and being a little selfish. The reality is, taking care of yourself is not selfish. And that was one of the first things that I realized after being diagnosed, was that I needed to take care of myself, that I needed to put myself first for possibly the first time in a really long time, because I was a wife, I was a mom, I was a friend, I was a chiropractor, I was a daughter. I was caring for a lot of people. And at some point in time, my own health and well-being was put on the back burner. And so there were moments where I had to say, I'm going to start juicing, or I'm going into the bathroom to do this coffee enema, and I will not be the go-to person right at this moment. I actually remember, and there's a twinge of mom guilt with this, but I remember going into the bathroom and starting a coffee enema, and my younger daughter, who about 19 months old at the time, she wanted me and no one else would do. And so she was laying outside of the bathroom, kind of whining. And when I was done, she had fallen asleep. The reason why I say that being a little selfish is not actually selfish is that if you don't take care of yourself, if I hadn't taken that time and acted a little selfish by putting myself and my health and my healing first, I wouldn't be here today. I would not be the mom and the wife and the practitioner and the friend and the daughter and sister that I am now. So if you have some mom guilt around taking time for yourself, putting your own health and well-being first, even if it's just getting a massage once a month or going to an appointment and leaving your children home with your spouse or a friend, it is life-giving. It is not selfish. Or if we can twist that or frame that word selfish to mean something else, I think that it will be transformational for us as women. Side note, and I will do an entire podcast specifically about this, but I've been learning a lot about how the brain changes in women in different seasons of their life. So when we enter puberty as preteens and teenagers, our brain changes. And basically what it does is it wires our nervous system to pay a little bit more attention to others versus just ourselves. So we kind of lose some of that natural selfishness at that time. And then it strengthens when we get pregnant and give birth. Our brain rewires again. And this time it becomes even stronger in the direction of we are putting our children above our own needs because they can't take care of themselves. And then the third time in our life where it changes is in menopause. And this time it changes where we are able to put ourselves first again. We come back to ourselves. So that's a really cool, just overview of how this need for selfishness kind of is almost like taken away from us for a season. But I think for myself, learning this lesson, I feel like every woman needs to understand that it's okay to be a little bit selfish, because in that selfishness, you are actually becoming better for those people that you want to care for, your children, your spouse, your friends, coworkers, clients, whatever it looks like for you in your life. If you do not take care of yourselves, you are not going to be there for all of those people. And we need you. We need you. The last lesson that I'll talk about today is something that I learned about 6 months into, maybe a little less, into this healing journey back in 2014. And it was that sometimes we can get so laser focused on a singular purpose. In this case, for me, it was my healing, that we miss out. It's kind of like that saying, you miss the forest for the trees. And I realized this when I was standing at my juicer. It was the end of the day. And how my life functioned for a very long period of time was I would juice in the morning, I would make juice in the midday, and I would make juice again twice in the evening, because I needed to get in. I was trying to get in a full 13 cups of juice per day. And with Gerson therapy, they basically say you can't make a day's worth of juice because the enzymes will denature. So maximum of 3 hours, essentially, from the time that you made the juice to the time you consume the last juice that you've made. So I would make juice, I would drink one immediately, and then hour 1, hour 2, hour 3. So that's 4 cups of juice right there. When I would get home in the evening, so I had cut back my hours at the office, but I was still working and seeing patients. When I would get home in the evening, I would make dinner for my family. And I would get the food on the table. I would sit down with them. We would pray over the meal. And then as soon as we said amen, I immediately would get up and walk over to my juicer and start making juice for myself. There was that. I was missing out a little bit on the mealtime aspect with my family. But the one evening that it really hit me the hardest was that after dinner, my husband took our girls into the backyard on the swing set, and they were swinging together and playing together. And here I am, standing in my juicer, looking out the window at them and realizing that I was missing out on their lives. And so it was at that point that I made the decision to cut back, just one making juice a day. And with Gerson therapy, they say 10 to 13 cups of juice per day. And so I was able to get in about 10 in a day with removing that last making juice time. And for me, that was just enough to say, okay, yes, we're laser focused, but we also have some peripheral vision to be present and to be part of my family's lives and to be in relationship. And so I just want to end with this. Again, wherever you're at in your life, wherever you are, if you're in a season of healing, or you know someone who is, if you have a child who is struggling in some way, know that there is not one right way to do things. that if something isn't working for you, it doesn't mean that it's hopeless. It means that you just haven't found that right thing yet. Not everyone will agree with the path that you're taking. Not everyone will understand what it is that you're doing and why. And that also is okay. It's okay to be just a little selfish because we need you. Mamas, we need you, and we need you to pass this on to your daughters, to share the wisdom that you have gained from your life and your life experience and your healing experience. We need you to share that so that the next generation is more prepared, is able to take what they've learned from you and run with it in a way that is impacting the world. And don't miss the forest for the trees. If you are in a season of healing, I applaud you. I encourage you. And also, don't miss out on fun. Don't miss out on your family. Don't miss out on relationships with others because you're so laser focused or head down looking at your juicer or whatever it is that you are choosing to do in this season of healing. Just know that through it all, you are designed to thrive. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to share it with a friend, like it, subscribe to this podcast, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.